The state of consciousness is, and especially in an entrepreneurial journey, is to be fully alive and awake along the journey. There are so many times that we can get from point A to point B within this journey that we're on as an entrepreneur, as a business leader, as a nonprofit leader, whatever hat you might wear, that we look back and we actually have moments that are blacked out a little bit, that are at void because we just were not aware. We were just on autopilot and going through the motions. Welcome to the Moxie Podcast. So this month is all about conscious collaboration. One, because I love collaboration, and two, I love to be conscious about it. But last year I started a conscious collaboration weekend, which is March 1st through 3rd. You can find all the information in the show notes. It is almost filled up, and I'm so excited because this event is free this year. I didn't want anybody to miss out on it. So it is a free event in San Antonio, Texas. I do not want you to miss out. I know some of you are flying in and I'm so excited. If you need a place to stay, let me know. If you want to come help cook, like literally, I'm going to cook you guys meals. This is going to be a homegrown conscious collab weekend and I'm really excited about it. So this is for anyone who is really an entrepreneur, an aspiring entrepreneur, someone who is looking to be connected to a beautiful and wonderful community and just needs a weekend to refresh and be inspired. So that is my little plug for Conscious Collab Weekend. But last week we talked about collaboration and why it's important in engaging with it. This week we are talking about consciousness and do we know what that is? And why is it important for engaging in consciousness? Because I think we can talk about collaboration all day, but if we don't have an intentional effort to collaboration, then collaboration can be missed. And so when we talk about consciousness, it is this level of understanding of where we are as a being, as a human being. It's this level of awakeness that we have when we engage with one another in conversation. It's this beauty of walking into a room and radically listening and truly being present, that we have this holistic perspective to what is. And so consciousness is this idea of being alive, right? I love and if you just like literally Google consciousness, it says the awareness or perception of something by a person. It also says the fact of awareness by the mind and itself of the world. And it says the state of being awake and aware of all of its surroundings. So that's what I want to focus on. Consciousness, the state of being awake and aware of all of our surroundings. I'm going to pose a question to you, and I'm sure you're going to be like, yes, this happens to me all the time. But have you ever been driving and then you are home and you say, how did I get home? Because you are such on autopilot that you kind of zone in and narrow in to just the actions, just the movements, and you aren't actually aware of your surroundings. You're actually not finally tuned in to what is happening around you, in front of you, maybe even in the car. Maybe you've zoned people out if you're driving with someone in the car and you just arrive. The state of consciousness is, and especially in an entrepreneurial journey, is to be fully alive and awake along the journey. There are so many times that we can get from point A to point B within this journey that we're on as an entrepreneur, as a business leader, as a nonprofit leader, whatever hat you might wear, that we look back and we actually have moments that are blacked out a little bit, that are at void because we just were not aware. We were just on autopilot and going through the motions. I do not want you to be there, and I do not want you to get there. And if you are there, then you're in a state of stagnation or habituation or of just lower level energies, and I want you to rise above that. Because as leaders for tomorrow, as visionaries, we need to be at I don't want to say frequency because we all have different frequencies and some of us are lower, some of us are higher, but we need to be at an energy. We need to be at a state that is of excitement, that is of enthusiasm, that is of high visioning, that is of joy, that is of trust. That's these above the line thinking emotions that we talk about in clarity, get clarity. And again, we have this month, we are actually having shift classes throughout the month of February. So please check those out. You can check those out in the show notes. But we're at this level that we are thinking and we're being mindful of what is our next step. So when I think of consciousness, I also think of visualization. The other day I was in this retreat and I was so grateful for it. And we were actually talking about our neural pathways and we were talking about neurotheology, which was really interesting because it took biblical concepts and brain science and put them together, and it was mind blowing for me. But we were talking about being present, and we were talking about this state of actually, we were stating what we were most afraid of. And when we stated that, everyone, said back, like, even in your biggest fear, you are seen and you're loved and you're heard. It was something around that concept. It was very AA format of like, hi, I'm Jenny, and this is what I'm most afraid of. And then with that, after speaking that, we then did a visualization practice where we closed our eyes and we were asked, what is the most joyful thing? The most joyful thing that we've maybe experienced, or when we think of joy, we think of this moment. And I closed my eyes, and then we had to put a name to it, right? So I closed my eyes and I put myself there and I thought, okay, what is the most joyful moment? And the first thing that my mind went to, and the consciousness, kind of that subconsciousness that we have, went to was Tiwi Beach. It's this beach near our house. We live on the coast. If you guys don't know that, I live in Mombasa, so we live on the coast, but we live on a bluff, so we don't necessarily have access to the beach. So there's this beach that's across the ferry. My husband proposed to me at a nearby national reserve, and then this beach is just really near and dear to our family's heart. So immediately when I thought of like something joyful, like the immediate pictures in my head was me walking on the beach and my kids running in front of me. And I look over my husband being there and the peacefulness, the serenity, like this serenity of that moment and the waves coming in, and it just being calm. And I had flashes of different moments of us on this beach. And what's interesting is the first moment that came to my mind was after a very actually traumatic situation that happened in our home. Our house was broken into. Actually, Sean, my husband, was gone. Our house was broken into. A lot of money was stolen out of our safe that was used for our boys program that we have, and it was a lot. It was a lot that my body was going through as a mother, as not having my husband to lean on at that moment. And so the first moment that I was thinking of in Tiwi Beach was after this, because I remember once I got the doors, new doors put on and new windows and new locks and all these things I had to do, I retreated to Tiwi Beach. I took the days off, I took my kids, and I just went. And I just remember after this like low traumatic time feeling so safe in this moment. And the title that I gave this visualization practice was the serenity of togetherness. And that's what I kind of want to hone in here, because we are meant to be in community. We are meant to be together. We are meant to be in a collective. That's the nature of how God has made us. And the pandemic is really interesting when we look at this, and I'm sure there's going to be tons of studies, if there's not already, throughout the next decade plus 100 years, of like what happened during that time. Because what happened during that time is you put us in isolation in a way of what our natural habitat is actually made to be. What happened during that time is you took people apart and they had to learn how to live a life in a box or in a very small area without having interaction. And we learned how to do that in a virtual space, right? But we still couldn't have that energy of touch, right? We still couldn't have the energy of just being in a room together. And so when I look back at this moment and the title that I gave it, the serenity of togetherness, like to be honest, my love language is acts of service and words of affirmation. Physical touch is one of my last love languages, but I have found as I've gotten older, just the power of a hug, the power of a rub on the shoulder, the power of someone just giving you eye contact and saying, I see you. And that is what I think about when I say, when I look at conscious as the first part of collaboration. It's one thing to go out and partner and collaborate with someone. It's one thing to do it in a conscious effort of being fully awake and present for them. That is my heartbeat. If anything, if I'm going to leave anything on this earth, I want people to remember that I was kind, that I cared, and that I was intentional with them, that I was conscious, that I was awake, that I was present. Not that I was distracted, but that I was there. And so for this episode, I kind of want to encourage you to find a time, whether that's now or later, to think through where can you put more conscious effort to? Where do you find yourself distracted? Is that motherhood? Is that leadership? Is that maybe you just putting things off and procrastinating if you're in a program of some sort? Maybe it's a relationship that you just are kind of a friendship that might be in a weird stage and you're not exactly sure how to approach it. I don't know what it might be in your life, but I feel in my heart that I need to remind you today of what it looks like to be conscious. It sounds silly because conscious is just being awake, right? It's like, oh yeah, you're not passed out, you're conscious. But what does it mean to do that authentically and with intention? To be there, to be present, and to have a peace with it as well. I think that's important. One thing that I've been working on this year is prioritizing health, and I've talked about this multiple times already in the podcast. But another thing I've been working on is how am I setting my priorities to release this distraction and to feel at ease. I promised myself that I'm going to be a little bit more decisive this year and go with my intuition and gut because I think that's really core to who we are, is that intuition that sometimes we ignore and we don't want to maybe listen to, but to follow that still small voice, the spirit for me, and to really step into that and walk in confidence in that. And at the same time, to do it in such an intentional manner that when decisions or even hard decisions have to be made, that people know that it comes from the right heart posture. When we decide to take a conscious effort in anything that we do, I pray that it's at the right heart posture of doing that. And when you are being fully present, it should be, because you should be grounded in your values of who you are, and that should encompass your whole being. So, as we're in February, the next couple episodes are going to be interviews that I'm having with people who are doing this, that I think are doing this really well, who consciously collaborate on a day to day and do this in a grand way. I think whether they are working in the Masai Mara, rescuing elephants, or whether they're bringing like-minded entrepreneurs together in beautiful circles to collaborate and to support one another in, or whether they're just being dynamic leaders right where their feet are. There are going to be some great conversations, and I encourage you to join us and continue to join us at the Moxie Podcast and in this community. This year, I've been really proud of myself because when you run a podcast, sometimes you get really ahead of the game and sometimes you get really behind the game. And I've been really proud of myself of getting really ahead of the game and showing up for you guys in a conscious effort and an effort that is so intentional and so present. And so I'm just excited. I'm excited for what I've planned out for this whole 2024 year. Yay, pat on my back of what's coming for you guys. And I really thoroughly hope you enjoy the conversations and the interviews that we have ahead and that they encourage you and inspire you to do more. Because as we started Moxie, right, it was to share courageous stories by ordinary people. And you are one of those stories. And I want you to use your voice for good. And I want you to be reminded that you are a change maker. And so go out, be that world changer today. And as always, Moxie on.